and I'll say this, if you've been harassed or you've been assaulted, which was really unfortunate and terrible, contact law enforcement.
Did the FAA just throw US drone pilots under the bus? Today we're going to bring you, in the words of the FAA Office of Communications, what the FAA's stance is on drone pilots' positions being displayed to the public through Remote ID. As you might expect from someone who runs a YouTube channel in the drone and tech world, I watch a lot of content put out by regulators around the world, and as you might also expect, most of it is interesting but rarely newsworthy as they trudge their way through agendas and the important work they do. However, the recent Q&A held by the FAA regarding Remote ID was a real eye-opener to me and exposed some concerning attitudes towards the safety of US drone pilots once Remote ID comes into effect. Now, before we get too far into this, I want to stress something which my regular audience will already know. I am not anti-regulator or anti-authority in any way, shape or form. In fact, a lot of my content on my channel focuses on how to follow the drone rules. I have no issue with Remote ID in principle, but that does not mean I will not highlight issues when I see them, and I feel we have one here. Whilst you're watching this, let me know in the comments below your thoughts on this story, which I would really appreciate hearing. I'm going to play you a few clips from the Q&A specifically focused in on the topic of drone operator safety, including the fear of theft of your devices, should the public be able to access your ground station location. Here's the first clip. I'll be back to comment in between.
And I'm going to take it because if I mess it up, Danielle, you can help me redo my resume as I'll be looking for some new work here. But this question comes in many, many different forms, and it's probably a question that people may have been shouting at their computer for the last 25 minutes, but we get a lot of comments, a lot of questions around this topic, which is the premise is Remote ID is dangerous for drone pilots. And the public is going to have now access to where a drone operator is standing, or at least where the control station is, or where the drone took off from. And they'll be able to find the drone operator and harass them. And this isn't to discount the fact that we know this has happened, not with Remote ID, but we know drone operators have been harassed. We get the information just as well as you folks do in the communities.
Okay, so here Kevin Morris confirms the FAA are aware of people being approached and harassed already before Remote ID is giving out your location to anyone who wants to see it. Remember that.
We utilize our drone pros. So our FAA safety team has volunteer members, almost at least one, if not more, in every single state that are involved with their local communities to help educate their local communities on what drones are doing, why they're good, and how they can be accepted, and that you don't need to worry. We also have an entire program in the FAA dedicated to coordinating with law enforcement. We call it our Law Enforcement Assistance Program, where we work directly with law enforcement agencies to provide them with the information they need to know so that they can accept and be familiar and comfortable with drones operating. And it's that broad-based education and outreach effort that we want to coordinate over the next, remember, we have a couple of years to go still, over the next couple of years, that we can get the community to be more accepting of drones. We want to highlight these wonderful things that drones are doing so people understand the benefit of them. We feel that that is going to be the best approach to try to limit. Again, we want to be in front of that harassment, not on the other side. If it does get to the other side, the FAA will have to address that accordingly, perhaps with some different rule changes toward the future. But ideally, we don't want you to be harassed at all. So we're working towards that goal and trying to educate and communicate first. So I understand, and not just myself, everyone at the FAA hears you loud and clear about the concerns that you folks have with regarding location identification and people being able to find you. But we're working on the front end of that and trying to educate first. And then if that doesn't work, we'll explore other means.
This clip again shows the FAA is aware enough to advise people that they should be contacting law enforcement if any issues occur. One of my issues here is that the FAA are passing the buck to law enforcement and frankly throwing drone pilots under the bus, because this is something which they are choosing to make worse. This is something they can do something about by preventing access to precise location information. Now we're going to fast forward a minute or so and pick up where Kevin is explaining the approach the FAA are taking to limit the issue of drone pilot safety over the next couple of years prior to implementation.
We utilize our drone pros. So our FAA safety team has volunteer members, almost at least one, if not more, in every single state that are involved with their local communities to help educate their local communities on what drones are doing, why they're good, and how they can be accepted, and that you don't need to worry. We also have an entire program in the FAA dedicated to coordinating with law enforcement. We call it our Law Enforcement Assistance Program, where we work directly with law enforcement agencies to provide them with the information they need to know so that they can accept and be familiar and comfortable with drones operating. And it's that broad-based education and outreach effort that we want to coordinate over the next, remember, we have a couple of years to go still, over the next couple of years, that we can get the community to be more accepting of drones. We want to highlight these wonderful things that drones are doing so people understand the benefit of them. We feel that that is going to be the best approach to try to limit. Again, we want to be in front of that harassment, not on the other side. If it does get to the other side, the FAA will have to address that accordingly, perhaps with some different rule changes toward the future. But ideally, we don't want you to be harassed at all. So we're working towards that goal and trying to educate and communicate first. So I understand, and not just myself, everyone at the FAA hears you loud and clear about the concerns that you folks have with regarding location identification and people being able to find you. But we're working on the front end of that and trying to educate first. And then if that doesn't work, we'll explore other means.
Here, Kevin explains the outreach program, which currently comprises of one person per state at least, who is working on improving public perception of drones. My issue with this clip is that they are stating that if drone confrontation becomes an issue, they will change the rules to help the situation. However, the clip played earlier confirms that the FAA already know this is a problem in the drone community, and their longer term response to solve thefts and potential violence towards drone pilots is to change the rules if the problem becomes significant enough. We have many drone rules put in place in case of harm or injury should come towards people or property, despite this being a very safe hobby. Yet on the other hand, the FAA know about confrontations and issues already occurring, and their plan is to change the rules should the problem be deemed great enough to warrant it. Surely a modern rulemaking system should work to address potential issues of safety for drone pilots when there's already data showing it is an issue. Now let's bring in another clip from the Q&A, which to me shows how the FAA do not grasp some of the key operational differences between manned and unmanned aviation.
But it also, just normalizes operations. When we see planes flying around in the sky, we don't question whether or not they're supposed to be there or whether they're being operated in compliance with anything. We're used to seeing the paint on it. We see the N numbers. There's just a sense of comfort that the system is working the way it's supposed to be. And I think this is a step in that direction. It's a step in getting everybody on board doing the same thing. And with that, we get, the opportunity for more advanced operations. So we already said, this is the next step towards complex operations, such as some operations over people, maybe beyond visual line of sight, maybe the UTM, the unmanned traffic system. So it's kind of the next logical step in moving the system along to a controlled and normalized system.
In this part of the session, Danielle Corbett explains that remote ID will bring drone operations into the same respected sphere as manned aviation. The general public will be able to look up and see the drone is legal and correct, just like you can see a plane or helicopter flying overhead. The issue with this, which concerns me, is that the FAA are not thinking enough like a drone operator when setting the ground station location to be public. The big difference between identifying a 747 flying in the sky with takeoff and landing locations to that of a drone flight: access. A Boeing operates from secure airports and flies at 30,000 feet with lots of necessary security to protect it. The difference is that giving out a drone operator's location is exposing that person to extra security concerns of a wide range. You can walk to a drone pilot in a field, whereas the pilot of a 747, of course, is in the sky with their aircraft. This attitude is a concern to me because it appears that not only does the FAA know there is already an issue with drone confrontation, but they're also making plans to potentially change rules in the future if it becomes a significant problem. To me, this single issue is the spotter of remote ID. For a while now, I have said that the FPV community are at a disadvantage when asked to use a spotter. It's something that most flyers simply will not do. This creates an environment where from minute one of a flight, many FPV flyers are already breaking the rules. So it becomes almost an outlaw activity rather than looking at the options of shielded operations, etc. The FPV spotter issue is one I know regulators around the world are working on, and I have some sympathy because they're resolving an issue after the fact. With remote ID locations being given to the public, they're racing head on into a problem that they even confirm might need addressing in the future. Why not make remote ID locations something only law enforcement or required authorities can gain? I understand the concept and the attempt to show drone flights as mainstream and respectable and bringing them into the manned aviation style of transparency and so-called respectability, but you are not introducing a new concept here. Members of the public who have an issue with drones now are not going to be convinced by an FAA campaign. So regulating to that hope could be argued as naive. Let me know what your thoughts are on this story in the comments below. You can find a link to the FAA Q&A in the description as well. Today's video is something a little bit different from our normal videos. This new studio setup with the Geeksvana sofa will be my opportunity to put out some videos which are a little bit more editorial opinion. They'll still be based in facts like all of our videos on this channel, but it will give an opportunity for you to get to know some of my thoughts on appropriate stories. If you're looking for more content like this, hit the subscribe button. And if you're one of the awesome people still watching this, please nudge the YouTube algorithm by hitting the like button. Thanks for watching. Sean out.